Hey guys, how's it going? I haven't done anything like this in a long time because life is, as it's wont to do, has gotten in the way. So a very quick one. I actually pulled over the side of the road because everything flowing around hit me. So this morning on my way to work, I listened to a regular morning show, and of course they were talking about what was going on in Vegas. But because they're trying to keep things light, they didn't dwell on it much. One thing they did say, all the DJs said, they couldn't stop thinking about what had happened in Vegas. And it's not been a good weekend in North America. You got everything going on. Hey, Keith, brother. You got everything going on in Puerto Rico still for and in Vegas for my American friends. And God, for some of my American brother and sisters in uniform who are in the midst of all this. And then in Canada, if you don't know, in Edmonton, Alberta, over the weekend, a lone wolf terrorist hit a cop with his car, then stabbed him multiple times. Hey, Deb. And then proceeded to, the cop's alive, but critical condition, and then proceeded to get a truck and ram it through a crowd of people. Obviously, things like this, whether you're a first responder and you're either in the midst of all this stuff, and if you are, then God bless you, my brothers and sisters, stay safe, or you're a first responder who wishes you could be there, and Deb and Keith, I know you'll get that, because that's what we do. We wish we could be there. Hey Gail, hey Colin, we wish we could make a difference. And we hate the fact that we can't be there. I can't up and fly to Puerto Rico as much as I would love to, because I know any cop, any paramedic, any firefighter, anybody in uniform knows they have skills that could help there. As much as I wish I could have been, not wish I could have been in Vegas, I wish that I could go down and help with the aftermath and help brothers and sisters do debriefings and work through their trauma and work through what's going to happen. Hey, Jen. And the point of all this I'm really getting at ultimately is all these things bring up so many emotions and so many questions. And as somebody who didn't talk for 7 years and didn't ask questions and didn't talk about the big issues with anyone, that can kill you. Even if you're not directly involved, even if you're simply sitting around your station house or your detachment and you're bullshitting back and forth, or a lot of times, hey Gary, my brother, a lot of times you might get questions from your kids. Mom, how could someone do that? How could someone shoot all those people? I know last night my sons and I were talking about Edmonton, and my sons are teenagers and they've known my whole career. They were born after I became a cop, so my whole career they've known what I do. And last night, this is one of the first times that we sort of had this kind of homegrown terrorism in Canada, and we were talking about it. It was the first time I ever saw my kids actually kind of worried about my job, because they know that I work on a highway and they know that I go to accidents and they know that I've been to horrible crashes. But my older son said, well, Dad, how did they target that cop? He was just a random guy, wasn't he? And I said, yeah, Jack, he was. He was just a random Edmonton police officer who was at a traffic point, and this guy saw his opportunity to take out a cop before he proceeded to a crowd. So, again, I know I'm kind of all over the map here, but ultimately what I'm getting at, and Gary, if anybody would get this, it'd be you, brother. Talk. If all these things are floating around, whether you're talking around your table or talking around your work table, talk with each other. Talk to your spouse. Talk to CISR. Talk to EAP. You can't let this stuff sit and fester. This is how years and years of psychological issues build up. I mean, for me, it was only 7 years. I have brothers and sisters I respect way more, who've been through way more than me, who sometimes went through their whole career and never talked because you just didn't do it. And then when they were tired, they went, holy shit, something's wrong. There is a concept called secondary trauma. There is a concept called vicarious trauma, where you can actually become traumatized through exposure to traumatic incidents. And it can happen. It's happened to they've done studies that shown during World War II, people even in London, they weren't in combat, but they were under constant fear of being bombed and of nightly raids, and they now think there was millions of people who had secondary trauma from the threat of constantly being under getting bombed by the Germans. It can happen as a society. The great thing is, we don't have to not deal with it. We don't have to suffer in silence. No one does. Whether you're a uniform, there's tons of resources out there now. There's great organizations. There's your own organization. There's Badge of Life. There's Badge of Life US and Canada. There are so many resources that we can tap into. There's now Wings of Change, which is another program that's catching on across Canada that I'm very proud to be involved with. If you're, and I don't want to use the term civilian, but if you're not in uniform, again, this is a golden opportunity to talk to your spouse, to your kids. If you have friends who are first responders, talk to them. Ask questions. Ask them how they feel about it. Ask them how you should be feeling about it. Because unfortunately, being someone in uniform, we deal with this way more than the average person does. And we're probably a little bit better equipped to deal with critical incidents on a regular basis. So that's why I called the video Just Talk, because that's what I'm saying. 7 years of not talking almost killed me. It almost cost me everything. Granted, I was directly involved in something, and this is societal stuff at large, but it doesn't matter. And I always say when I present that trauma is relative. Something that's traumatic to you, something that's bothering you, is bothering you. It doesn't matter whether it fucking bothers someone else or not. Nobody's trauma, nobody's crisis is more or less important than the other. Your stuff is your stuff, and you have to own it. And part of thanks, Gailey. Part of being an adult, part of being a responsible adult is knowing that, especially if you have kids, is knowing that you have an obligation to them as well. And it took me, again, so long to figure out that as I was falling apart, so were my kids. And in the last couple of weeks, I've had some really good talks with my younger son, Brady, and so was my wife, so was Kath. And Brady said the saddest time in his life that he remembers was just after my post-traumatic stress diagnosis, and lots of closed-door meetings between him, eggs, Bernie, lots of closed doors meetings between me and Mom, and he knew something was wrong, and Jack knew something was wrong. This is when we lived in Barrie. So for those 2 years, that's what they associate with living in Barrie, was Mom and Dad in their room, not yelling, not screaming, just door closed, and obviously heavy things going on. So your kids get it. Hey Josh, what's going on, my friend? Your kids get it. Josh, I owe you a phone call. Your kids get it, and they know, and they're perceptive. So if they have questions about all these horrible things, and I'm not saying you need to get into a heavy conversation about, hey Josh, I'm not saying you need to get into a heavy conversation about, oh shit, gun control or terrorism or mass shootings, Heron, or anything like that. If that's where it leads and your kids are old enough to engage in a conversation about gun control, if you live south of the border from us, from me, or it leads into a question about terrorism or disaster relief or whatever, wherever the conversation goes, run with it as much as you can. Again, kids are way more perceptive when it comes to crisis than we think. And I realize now that by not talking about my own issues with trauma, I did my kids a real disservice. Jeff, good morning, my friend. And they would have gotten way more out of talking than I knew. Again, I was being selfish, almost saying, no, it's my issue, it's my problem to deal with, it's my baggage to carry, when really it should have been everyone's baggage. My wife, my kids, not just the people I occasionally lashed out at or the occasional peer supporter I talked to who never got the whole story. So, yeah, it's been a really shitty couple days in North America. It has not been pleasant as far as the news. And again, I can only imagine, having been in a couple big incidents, I can imagine what our brothers and sisters in uniform who are in Vegas on the ground or in Puerto Rico or in Edmonton trying to clean up the mess. Well, and one, you can't really blame nature, but there's someone you can blame, but that's a whole story for a different brand. Trying to picture, hey Corinne, trying to picture what they're going through. And there will be thousands of first responders mobilized for all of these things. And they're all going to have their own things to talk about after as well. So if you know a first responder who's in one of those areas, talk to them. Let them know you're thinking about them. Send them this video, whatever. We have to talk about this stuff. And I know most of the people on here now are either first responders or want to be very badly. And some of them are even in the process of getting hired. We can't afford anymore to let these chances to talk go by. Whether, like I said, whether it be with each other or our family or our peers. I wish I knew some guys in Vegas because I'd love to call down there and go, hey, just want to let all you guys know, all your brothers and sisters up north are thinking about you. I do have a couple buddies who work for Edmonton, and I've had a chance to pass that way. Same with Puerto Rico. I know it's a disaster is a whole different ball game from a shooting or a crime, but still. So not just the people in the video now, but once you watch this, and I'm going to post this on my page and also in the Dad's Edge group I'm on and in the Mental Health Warriors group I'm in. If you know somebody in one of those spots who is dealing with this, please, please, please let them know you're thinking about them. And if they need to talk, you'll talk to them, especially if you're in another uniform, because it's so much easier to talk to somebody who's been there. So anyway, guys, I do need to get to work. But this all rolled from that one comment by the morning show I was listening to, and that got me rolling, thinking about how much we do bury and how much we don't talk. And if the average person is bothered by what happened in Vegas, then I thought people who do this for a living probably bothered you a little bit more. So I can always use a hug, Jen. So anyway, guys, thanks for listening. Thanks for taking time out of your morning. Wherever you are, stay safe, stay healthy, stay strong. Hug your kids, hug your spouse, whatever you got to do to stay safe and keep yourself sane. Okay? See you, everyone.